Welcome to Cartoon Scary! Boo!
Have you ever stood in an empty room, completely alone, only to feel the sudden, heavy sensation of being watched? And accompanying that feeling is a scent. Folklore suggests that specific fragrances function as active beacons, transmitting a clear signal to unseen forces waiting in the periphery. This brings us to Samina. As a new bride, she stood before her mirror late at night, applying her favorite Itra, a highly concentrated traditional perfume. She ignored the warnings of her sister-in-law, Aisha, who pleaded with her that strong scents after dark draw out things better left alone. We can look at this moment through the mechanics of the catalyst. This diagram illustrates a standard dimensional barrier between our world and the supernatural realm. As the scent wave expands outward, it breaches that solid line, creating a localized bridge between the two environments. By indulging in a late-night act of vanity, Samina had unknowingly broadcast her exact coordinates to a predator. The trap closes later that night on an isolated stretch of forest road. When their car engine overheats and stalls out, Samina's husband Usman steps away to find water, leaving her alone in the silence. This initiates the first phase of the hunt, supernatural stalking. The entity maneuvers its target into physical isolation to test their psychological resilience and flood their system with fear. Building tension. The air turns freezing. Samina hears a distinct groan from the deep woods. As her heart rate spikes, she is suddenly gripped from behind. But when she spins around, it's only Usman returning. The physical threat was a false alarm. However, as the couple finally drive away, a tall, inhuman shadow remains perfectly still at the edge of the tree line, watching them depart. Surviving that isolated forest was an illusion of safety. The entity chose not to attack among the trees because it had already permanently locked onto her scent. At midnight, the house is silent. Then a window slowly creaks open on its own. This sequence maps to the threshold breach. Looking at this vector model of a human silhouette, we see an entity transition into a biological parasite. A dense mass of particles enters through the host's head and branches outward, filling every empty space inside the body. For Samina, this takeover happens in a fraction of a second. As she sleeps, the floating shadow violently plunges directly into her physical form. The external hunt has concluded. The process of internal consumption is now underway, turning her own body into an inescapable trap. By morning, a severe physiological shift has occurred. While Samina's physical body remains intact, her consciousness is suppressed beneath the weight of a newly dominant entity. The first external symptom manifests as a rejection by the natural world. As Samina walks down the street, the neighborhood dogs recognize the demonic presence inside her, erupting into aggressive barking. The jinn responds with swift brutality. By morning, the local alleyways are silent, littered with the motionless bodies of every dog in the neighborhood. The damage extends inward to the family unit. Usman's mother experiences such severe, unexplainable terror that she is struck entirely mute, her body frozen in permanent shock. Then comes the physical collateral. On a deserted road, Samina's aunt turns around to find an entity wearing her niece's face, leading to her violent death. Witnessing the family's collapse, Aisha confronts her brother with a terrifying reality. The woman in their home is no longer his wife, but a monster wearing Samina like a suit. Demonic possession operates as a systemic rot, designed to psychologically torture and physically dismantle the victim's entire familial network. Usman brings in a Malvi, a religious scholar, who confirms the jinn is fully entrenched. The confrontation is set for Chandrat, the eve of the new moon. This initiates the purge. This graphic demonstrates the mechanics of an exorcism, a violent battle of attrition, where the force of divine intervention must slowly and forcefully overwhelm the demonic presence. The jinn's resistance triggers terrifying physical manifestations. Samina levitates above the floor, her voice distorts into a guttural growl, and the heavy wooden furniture violently slides and rattles against the floorboards. The breaking point hits when the Malvi recites a final, booming prayer. A blinding pillar of purifying light strikes downward, incinerating the entity and ripping it away from its host. A successful exorcism is inherently traumatic. The process extracts the parasite, but leaves the human host physically drained and emotionally hollowed out. As the supernatural storm breaks, Samina collapses to the ground, her own consciousness returning. A chilling quiet settles over the household. The monster may have been vanquished in this instance, but the underlying mechanics of this folklore remain permanently in place. The rules persist. So the next time you apply your favorite perfume late at night and the air suddenly feels heavy, remember that some scents are invitations, and something in the dark might be ready to accept.